So hello, I'm Jeff Goebel. I'm with the Healthy Soil Working Group, and I'd like to visit with you a little bit about soil health equals true wealth and a farm ranch financial planning process that incorporates soil health principles in the work. And what we're going to do is I'll give you an overview of this. It's a mind map that you see down here on the side of the screen. I'd like to also thank Rio de la Vista and Danielle Howell for their development of this mind map. It's basically a decision-making framework that helps you move from where you are to where you want to go financially, with the added value of your farm and your ranch, the ecologic systems that you're working with, and the human dynamics. First of all, I want to just talk a little bit about the rationale for why think about this puzzle differently than what we're doing. So if you look at some research from the National Farmers Union, the farmer doesn't get a lot on the dollar from what they produce. It's amazing how little it is. $5 is what a pound of bacon sold for in 2018, and the farmer got 59 cents on that. Steak was $8.99, and the farmer got $1.74. Not very much money that gets back in the farmer and rancher's pocket. Here's an interesting graph. This line right here, the bottom line is the net cash income that farmers get, which reflects what we were just looking at. And then this is the cash receipts for the various types of crops that we grow, how much money is made. And then this is the production costs that go into cost of food, producing food, and getting food out in the marketplace. And you notice back here around World War II, is there started to become quite a departure between, what was being paid for food and what the farmer got. And so this whole red area in here is the area that is an opportunity for the farmer and rancher to retake it. And this financial planning process that I'll share with you is that exploration of what can you do to take control of this red area, get that back on the farm. About half of this is the cost of production. It's fertilizers, it's biocides, it's the fuels that we use for in being capitalized with a lot of tillage. And what's interesting is those items have a tendency to be soil destroying tools that we have. It's actually set your soils backwards. About half of this is those kinds of things. The other half is marketing and distribution and interest charges and that sort of thing. So there are things you can do all the way through here to regain that, and that's what this process does, is help you figure out how to do that. We call it the holistic resource management financial planning process. The idea with holism is that it looks at everything that matters to you. So the quality of your life, the means to support that way of life, like profitability and economics and social values that are important, and then the means to sustain that way indefinitely. And that's where the soil health principles comes in terms of the health of the ecosystem, and also even your relationships and your neighborhoods and that sort of thing, in terms of getting societal support for what you're doing, what you're about. And so the first stage, and you'll notice we're up here at the very top of this chart now, is you develop this goal. Then once you have that, you start the planning process, which the first stage is planning the planning. And so part of planning the planning is setting the logistics, and that includes when you're going to do it, who's going to do it, where are you going to do it, and what information and whatnot do you need. Okay, that's one part of planning the planning. The other part is brainstorming all the ideas, what you can do to cut expenses, and that's not only in money but also in time. How can you save yourself time and invest that into other places? It's the same thing with looking for opportunities with cutting expenses for money. And that gets back to that graph that I showed you at the beginning. Also, you want to brainstorm all the ways to increase income, all the possibilities. And when you're brainstorming, you really don't want to throw any ideas out. You're looking for quantity, not quality. Quality comes later. You want to, where you narrow those ideas down. But there are opportunities to come up with things that you can't even imagine just by creatively brainstorming lots and lots of ideas. And then from that, then through a process like this, you can shorten that list and remove the ridiculous ideas. That's that part of that quality piece. And then you want to check to see if it really returns cash back to your overhead. You want to see if it, meets the other values that really matter to you. And that's what these other questions are. And then once you get to that stage, then you can do a more fuller gross, we just call it margin analysis, but now we call it gross profit analysis. So how much money you're bringing back to your overhead. And then once you shorten the list, then you really start, you start researching other elements of what you need to do, those different types of income opportunities. So this is that big step, the first planning step when you look at it all together. Then, now that you've got that prepared, then we begin the formal planning session. And first thing you want to do is plan your income. And you want to remember that the goal drives the process. So that's that holistic goal that we talked about in the beginning. That's what you're wanting to facilitate or produce, is that outcome. Then biodiversity is your source of wealth. Is the healthier your land is, the more you're going to be able to convert sun energy into profitability on your land. And then money is only a measure of wealth. So it's just a way to check to see how you're doing. And your best tool that you have, the most powerful tool you have, is your creativity. And it's to really think, how, for instance, on that chart of the red part of that chart, how can you regain or recapture more and more and more of that red back to the farm? So then, once you've developed that, with developing the plan the income, you estimate income on worksheets. And so you put your different enterprises, is how I usually set this up. So you've got your livestock, you've got crops, you may have other enterprises, which could include, like, a job in town could be considered an enterprise to support the ranch. Also, you might have a bed and breakfast. You just think about the different types of enterprises and you work them out on spreadsheets like this, and then bring that information, the income information from that, to the annual income and expense plan. So then once you've got your annual income, you've got a sense of what your total profit's going to be, or your total income's going to be for the year. And then the next step is you want to plan the profit. It's not plan the expenses, which is what we typically do, is we do income minus expenses equals profit. And in this planning process, it's income minus profit equals expenses. And so what you do is you take your total income from the chart I just showed you, you cut it in half, or you think of some number that really pushes you, stretches you, and then that half becomes your expense target. Or another, if you have high debt, you take your total income, you minus your debt, you cut that in half, what's left, and that becomes your expense target. So you basically are looking something that is achievable, but it's really difficult, push you to make it happen, and it requires discipline to make, to keep on it and make it happen. Okay, so you want to have some kind of profit target that you're working toward. Okay, you don't want to just let it happen, you want to make it happen. So then now it's time to plan the expenses. So now once you've got that target of what your expense target is, now you plan your expenses. And the first thing to think about is this one called weak link down here. And one way to look at weak link on your ranch in the financial sense is that here's the sun. And basically what you're selling in agriculture out this end is what's called solar dollars. Solar dollars is the money you get from raising corn, for wheat, for pecans, for cotton, for onions, for peppers, for livestock of all different kinds, even wildlife, and even recreation is the opportunity of solar dollars out the other end. So the first link is being to convert sun, take that, capture that energy on Earth, and you do that through plants, through photosynthesis. The more bare ground you have, the more energy that's bouncing back up in the atmosphere. So the more cover you get on your soil surface, and the more cover that is green through the year, so you got living plants, and the more biodiversity you have, that's the opportunity to capture more and more of that energy. So as you capture the energy here on Earth through plants, then you got to convert that product into that plant into some kind of product that's useful for humans that you can sell in the marketplace. So if you have grasslands, of course, that we can't really eat grass, but if we have cattle or wildlife or sheep, goats, that's that conversion of turning that energy into a product that's usable by humans. But sometimes your plant is your product, like corn or wheat or pecans. That is your product. So that it becomes really one and the same right here. Then the next part of that chain is the market conversion. So you want to get the best price, not just necessarily get a commodity price, but is there an opportunity to enhance, get value added to the product that you have, so that when you sell it, you're getting, for every unit that you're selling, you're getting it at a better price. So these are the three links in terms of the financial weak link that generates solar dollars. And then once you've got your solar dollars, you invest, and you invest in your area where it's weakest on your operation. Maybe you got too much bare ground. Maybe you don't have the best product to sell. Maybe you need better prices in the marketplace. The next thing you do with your expenses, you prioritize A, B's, and C's and D's. A's are things that will generate new wealth. So education about marketing, or maybe putting a fence in to allow you to grow more vegetation. Um, so those kinds of investments are really worth putting, like 100% investment in, because for every dollar you put in, you get $2 back. Inescapables are the B items, and those are things like taxes and insurance. And what you want to do with these things, you definitely got to pay them, because that's, legally, that's, you'll be in trouble if you don't. But look at how you can minimize, legally minimize the impacts of those. And so that's what you want to do with escapables. Other items are maintenance items. And again, you want to minimize, those kinds of things. You want to make sure that you're changing the oil and building the relationship things and that sort of thing. So those are maintenance items, but you want to make sure that you're investing adequate but appropriate time. They're not over investing. And then finally, there's this waste area, which is total loss, and you definitely want to cut that out of what you're doing. So you organize your expenses that way. You can use these enterprise charts that we looked at earlier with income. You plan your expenses on this thing. You transfer that over to the income and expense plan, and then from there you take that information on. You've got that built onto your annual income and expense, and you want to add depreciation. You want to plan depreciation for equipment and other things that you have. You want to plan your retirement and estate investments into this. And then you want to see how your cash flows through the year. And so that's the next step that's really important, is once you've got all these numbers on there, you can take a look and see how things are moving, and seeing if there's going to be a cost to you with debt and what you can do to manage that. So then finally, the last page of this work down at the bottom here is you want to analyze and assess your plan, and you ask yourself, will it work? And which means, did you achieve your profit target? And if the answer is no, then you replan now until you get to yes. So you make it happen. You don't just let it happen. At this point, then once you've got to yes, then you stick to it. You want to monitor on often a monthly basis. And if you've got anything that's out of whack, like your income might have been less than what you planned, and if that's the case, you want to adjust all of your expenses for the rest of the year so that you're back on plan, because you've got this less income generation that you weren't expecting. Or if one of your expense items is greater than planned, like your fuel or feed costs or whatever, then you want to take that one item, and cut that item or adjust that item so that it does get back on track with your plan. So creatively look at what you can do for reducing fuel costs or hay costs or that sort of thing. And then once you've looked at your plan for the month, then you take controlling action. There's control sheets that you can work with, which asks you what's off, why is it off, how much is it off, what would be done to get it back on track, and who's going to be responsible. And that's a really important step. So you make sure that you're actually, the accountability, that you're actually making things happen that you want. And then finally you replan. You incorporate that into your plan now, and then that is a continuous loop through the year, each month of the year. If that's, you may need to do it more frequently if you're really struggling, with the financial situation, and possibly less frequently if you're doing really, really well with things. But that's your annual plan. And what the purpose of the annual plan is, this ever increasing quality of life that we defined early in that holistic goal at the very beginning. So you want to make sure that your life is getting better and better and better as a result of what you're doing. So that's the financial planning process. And if you've got any questions, here's contact information for me. That's my cell phone, and that's my email address. And again, I appreciate your time with this really important topic in terms of how to get um, control back into agriculture with the financial situation. So thank you.